Greetings, friends. You're watching the Ruslan Belov channel, and today we'll discuss the situation in Ukraine as of November 12, 2025. It has been a packed day, events are unfolding rapidly, and each of them could reshape the broader picture. We'll begin with a string of corruption scandals that are shaking Ukraine one after another, most of them emanating from Kiev. The story began a few days ago, although investigations by Dnipro detectives have apparently been underway for quite some time. Only yesterday did the first documents and high-profile names begin to surface, and as soon as information about possible suspects started appearing in the press, a well-known Ukrainian businessman, Timur Mindich, hurriedly left the country. According to sources, he flew out just a few hours before Dnipro officers arrived at his home with a search warrant. Mindich is suspected of involvement in corruption schemes linked to supplying drones to the Ukrainian army and restoring energy infrastructure after Russian strikes. Nor did the news end there. It became known that Ukraine's national security chief, Rustem Umerov, also left the country. He flew to Turkey, where he soon posted on social media, saying he had arrived to hold talks on prisoner exchanges. But the question arises, with whom exactly does he intend to conduct these negotiations? Such matters are handled at a minimum with the Russian Federation, and Moscow has not officially confirmed any meetings or contacts on this issue. The Russian side, at least for now, remains completely silent. Thus, we see that two figures linked to corruption cases quickly departed Ukraine. One headed to Israel, the other to Turkey. Formally, this could ease pressure on Zelensky's inner circle, yet reports have also emerged that an individual, possibly close to the president, and according to some, even his godfather, has begun cooperating with investigators and is prepared to make a deal with Dnipro. If this is confirmed, documents may soon be published exposing money flows, covert schemes, and the actors involved. It is becoming clear that the surge in anti-corruption probes right now is no coincidence. This is a lever of pressure from the United States. Direct military intervention in the Ukrainian conflict is not an option for Washington, but it can act indirectly, through political and economic pressure, to push Zelensky toward negotiations with Russia and acceptance of its terms, including territorial concessions. Zelensky himself, however, does not appear ready for compromise. He has been highly active, traveling across regions, and recently visited Kherson, where he recorded a video at the city entrance to project an image of control. Recall that in October there was intense discussion of possible fighting in the Korabel neighborhood. Zelensky's visit there was an attempt to reassure the population and reinforce the image of a leader with a firm grip on the situation. Even so, the AOB investigations are gaining momentum, and new documents and names can be expected in the coming days. More business figures and officials may follow the example of Mindich and Umerov, leaving Ukraine for unknown destinations. Now let's turn to the front. We start with the western Zaporizhzhia axis. Here, operators of the 7th Heaven Group continue to control the airspace over the Primorske and Stepnohirsk areas. Aware of the threat, Ukrainian units are rushing reinforcements to Stepnohirsk, which functions as a kind of defensive citadel. Yet footage from the area shows that almost all equipment arriving at this sector is destroyed shortly after entering the combat zone. At the same time, reports have come in about the evacuation of residents from the settlement of Malokaterynivka. People are being moved out in haste, presumably to free up buildings for military units tasked with holding the line. It's important to understand the geography. Malokaterynivka effectively merges with neighboring communities, Kushuhum and Balabino. There are no clear boundaries here. It is a chain of inhabited areas blending into one another. And just beyond Balabino begins the city of Zaporizhzhia proper. Thus, the announced evacuation of Malokaterynivka may mark the start of evacuations from the southern outskirts of Zaporizhzhia. The process appears to have begun and is likely to intensify as Russian forces advance north along the M18 highway. Turning to the eastern Zaporizhzhia axis, Russian forces are also pressing forward. Today, an official report from the Ukrainian command responsible for this sector drew considerable attention. The document plainly acknowledges that Ukrainian units have begun to withdraw. This is the first time in a long while that the Ukrainian side has officially confirmed a pullback under pressure from Russian strikes. The focus is the settlement of Ravnopolye. In fact, this may be the first instance, possibly since 2023, of Kiev acknowledging a territorial loss before Russia's defense ministry announced a clearing operation there. It's an unprecedented development that points to serious change. The pace of Russia's advance is increasing, and the northeastern portion of the Dnipro sector appears to be buckling under the pressure. Just yesterday, November 11th, maps showed Russian units closing in on the settlement of Yablokovo. Today, pro-Ukrainian sources indicate that roughly half of Ravnopolye is a grey zone, with 10 to 20% under Russian control and the remainder held by Ukrainian forces. Nonetheless, the official Ukrainian statement confirms that troops have pulled back. It is highly likely Russia's defense ministry will confirm this tomorrow by publishing geolocated footage and videos of flags being raised in the liberated areas. Ukrainian forces are retreating toward Dnipro in hopes of organizing a defensive perimeter around the town. But judging by the momentum of the offensive, a further withdrawal westward toward Orikhiv may soon become inevitable. Meanwhile, Russian troops continue to assault Velikomikhailovka. Maps were updated again today. Neutral cartographic services recorded Russian advances and an almost completed clearing of the settlement of Aristopol. In sum, the operational situation in the south remains extremely tense. Russian forces are making steady gains, and the Ukrainian army is increasingly compelled to abandon positions, something now acknowledged even by its own command. With each passing day, it becomes more evident that the front under Zaporizhia is shifting, and this could soon become one of the key developments of the entire autumn campaign. Some experts already claim that Aristopol has passed fully and firmly under the control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Ukrainian units have withdrawn north across the Volkhya River, where they are attempting to dig in and establish a defensive line. However, there is a high likelihood that Russian forces, pressing on the heels of the retreating troops, will enter the limits of Velikomikhailovka, at which point the situation on this sector would change fundamentally. At the same time, in the southern part of the city of Mirnograd, Russian units have begun an active assault on the citadel. Today, perhaps the most striking footage is coming from this direction: massive explosions, airstrikes, ammunition depot detonations. One video shows a direct hit by an FAB-3000 aerial bomb on fortified Ukrainian positions. The strike effectively leveled an entire neighborhood. Additional footage shows further strikes, again using FAB-3000 munitions. The significance of these videos goes far beyond ordinary battlefield footage. Just a day ago, reports emerged that some Ukrainian units in this area had shown a willingness to surrender. After Russian forces intercepted radio communications between Ukrainian soldiers and their command, the area was flooded with leaflets urging them to lay down their arms. According to the latest information, about 25 Ukrainian servicemen surrendered. They likely possess valuable knowledge about ammunition depots, supply routes, and defensive positions. Almost immediately afterward, footage appeared showing new precision strikes on ammunition warehouses, followed by powerful secondary explosions. This indicates that the Ukrainian defensive line in this sector has effectively collapsed. After such devastating hits, morale among the troops drops sharply, and the number of those willing to surrender grows exponentially. It is quite possible that in the coming days, the southern part of Mirnograd will come fully under the control of the Russian army. At the same time, Russian units are completing the clearance of the northern quarters and neighborhoods of Pokrovsk. Recently released videos show that the main fighting is now concentrated in a small area, the last remaining corridor for Ukrainian forces. Through this narrow stretch, just a few kilometers wide, Ukrainian soldiers and foreign mercenaries are still trying to escape encirclement. But the shape of the front lines makes it clear. The exit is cut off, and the chances of breaking through are minimal. In central Pokrovsk, footage showing a surviving church standing amid the ruins has drawn widespread attention. It appears to be the only building left intact after weeks of fierce battles. It's hard to believe. Everything around it is scorched and reduced to rubble, yet the church looks untouched, as if it had been shielded by an invisible hand. Further north, Russian drones and aircraft are striking intensively. This suggests that the Ukrainian side is moving its remaining reserves here in an attempt to launch a counterattack and break the blockade of Mirnograd. However, these concentrations are being hit with high precision by Russian artillery and FPV drones, completely suppressing any attempts to advance. Ukrainian vehicles are being destroyed on the approaches, 10 to 15 kilometers from the front line, making the transfer of reinforcements practically impossible. In theory, helicopters could be used, but Ukraine simply does not have enough of them. Next, the situation on the Konstantinovka axis. For quite some time, this area remained quiet, suggesting a regrouping of forces in the regions of Yablonovka, Alexandro-Kalinovo, Ekaterinovka, Kleban-Bek, Pleshevka, and the southeastern outskirts of Konstantinovka. Judging by new reports, that regrouping is now complete, and from today, Russian activity has sharply increased. Western analysts note Russian advances along the tree lines and the northern shore of the Kleban-Bek reservoir. By the evening of November 12th, these areas were already marked either as grey zones or as territories under Russian control. From these positions, there is now a clear path toward Berezovsk and Ilyanovka, that is, toward the southwestern part of Konstantinovka. In the southeast, fierce battles continue for the settlement of Ivanopoliye. Ukrainian forces there have found themselves in a partial encirclement. Russian units are attacking from the south and the northeast, while Ukrainian operators use FPV drones to strike back at advancing troops. Video footage shows Ukrainian drones hitting Russian assault units, but the front is slowly and steadily shifting. It seems likely that the Ukrainian army will soon have to abandon Ivanopoliye and retreat toward the N20 highway. After that, the front line will likely even out between Yablonovka, the Kleban-Bek reservoir, Berezovsk, and the southeastern outskirts of Konstantinovka. The intensity of fighting in this area continues to grow. The Russian army appears to be applying the same tactics that proved effective in Pokrovsk. Assault and reconnaissance groups infiltrate deep into the city, disrupt communications, block troop rotations, and create logistical chaos, followed by regular army units that clear the streets and fortified areas. Now to the Siversk sector. Here the situation remains relatively calm. Apparently an operational pause and regrouping is underway. Russian drones are actively patrolling the area, striking isolated targets as far as the vicinity of Lyman. In one video, a drone strikes a Ukrainian military vehicle traveling from Lyman toward Drobyshevo. The ambush occurred well behind the front line, demonstrating the precision and reach of Russian reconnaissance operations. On the Kupiansk front, the situation remains stable. Some analysts claim that the eastern part of the city has not yet been completely cleared, despite the Russian Ministry of Defense announcing its capture yesterday. Today, new footage confirming full control was expected, but it has not yet been released. Nevertheless, Russian forces continue their advance, maintaining the initiative and control of the battlefield. The Ukrainian side has attempted counterattacks on the western outskirts of Kupiansk, but without success. The Russian army firmly holds the initiative and continues to dominate the key positions. That's all for now, friends. Thank you for staying with us, following the updates, and supporting the channel. Subscribe, leave a like. There's much more important information ahead. Take care and see you soon.